to the GOAT Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Neander. All right, we're going to be going over our Week 6 games, reviewing the action. There's a lot to talk about in Week 6, a lot to unpack. But we're going to start today with a brand new segment we're going to call WTFF. That's What the Fantasy Football. And really, though, what the fantasy football is going on. I feel like every Monday, every Tuesday, I'm really kind of scratching my head and some of the moves that I've made, some of the moves that I've recommended. Not only do they not pan out, but really just quite the opposite happens, right? Malcolm Brown, Stephon Diggs, Hunter Henry. These are some guys that I either recommended to play or not to play, and was on the wrong side of those. On the other hand, a lot of guys, came through with those big games that we were hoping for, that we were expecting. David Johnson had a nice game. You had a lot of guys, Russell Wilson and Chris Carson in Seattle. So there were a lot of guys I was big on that did wind up having a nice game here. But this segment of WTFF is going to be dedicated to our biggest surprises and our biggest disappointments so far in the 2019 season through 6 weeks. There's just been, a lot of names that haven't performed, and a lot of names that we didn't expect to, come near to the performance that they've had so far. And I just want to take a few minutes to highlight some of those guys, and see what I think about them moving forward. If they're going to continue, to play, how they're playing right now, or if we think they're going to turn it around, or if we think it's going to, kind of hit the wall for them. So, we're going to start with our quarterbacks here, and I want to start with Kyler Murray. So he's one of the biggest surprises for me of the season so far. I wasn't, really high on Kyler Murray. Rookie quarterbacks typically do, struggle in their first season in. I know they have this, kind of high-powered, in theory, offense. They're running the air raid offense with Cliff Kingsbury, and it's not that I didn't think he had an opportunity to succeed, but I just didn't see him, coming on out of the bats throwing as much as they are, especially with David Johnson back there, and I really thought it would just be a little while longer until they got things going here. But right now he's the number 7 quarterback in the league in fantasy, and that's a good amount higher than I had him ranked. I had him, right around number 18, number 20. As we got closer to the season, I was kind of inching him up, but I saw, a lot of people putting him up there in that QB1, kind of range, and I just really had a tough time seeing that happening. But they are throwing the ball a ton. He's got that nice floor with the rushing yards, and that's been kind of amping up lately. And I really do think this is going to keep up. In fact, I think there's been a lot of missed opportunities, a lot of points on the table when you throw the ball that much. I mean, the numbers aren't bad on the season, but when you throw the ball that much, you expect to have a few more touchdowns through the air. Finally got 3 last week against Atlanta, so that was a really good week as far as the passing touchdowns go. But you've been hoping for more of those the last couple of weeks before that. There weren't any touchdowns in the air, even though there was 250 or so yards passing. Just couldn't get the ball in the end zone. So I expect him to be up here in this range. I don't know if there's that much room for him to move up into the top 6, into that top half of QB1s, but I have no reason to think that he's not going to be a QB1 at this point going forward. In most matchups, obviously you can't expect that every single week, but I just think with the volume and the output, kind of leaning on Larry Fitzgerald, a little bit of David Johnson in there, running the ball when you have to. I do think that Kyler Murray has every single opportunity to keep this going. He's scoring 21.7 points per game right now, and I'm just really impressed with Kyler Murray so far. I didn't see it coming, but I think if you drafted him, you got him at great draft capital late in the draft, and you're really happy about playing him every week. He's going to get the rushing yards. He's going to be throwing the ball around, and all good times for Kyler Murray owners. The other guy I want to talk about is Jacoby Brissett, Indianapolis Colts quarterback. So, this young guy, he got, had to go through a lot this year. First of all, Andrew Luck, the surprise retirement took everybody by surprise. And I have no doubt that he found out, a little bit before we did in the public. But I'm sure when he did find out, it was a huge surprise and an instant amount of pressure. Becoming the starting quarterback, knowing that the job is yours, not due to injury. It's not like he had to be, playing every single week and wondering when Andrew Luck was going to be healthy and when he was going to lose his starting job. Now he knows he has the job. He's had a little bit of injury concerns with his weapons. T.Y. Hilton hasn't been fully healthy. Devin Funchess, their free agent acquisition, hasn't been able to really get on the field, and he's still putting it together. So overall, he's the number 17 quarterback, but he already had his bye, so he's scoring 18 points a game, and that would put him as the number 12 quarterback. So he's a QB1 right now, and I didn't see a lot of people having Jacoby Brissett near QB1 numbers. I think he's shown just quite a lot of poise, just in every way you can imagine. On the field, playing the game as a good game manager. He's got an excellent offensive line, a very smart head coach, and they want to play smart football, and he's been doing that. He's been taking care of the ball and not trying to do more than he can or more than is needed. And I think that's a really important thing for this team right now, is not to play outside of their skill level. And I do think Frank Reich is doing a great job of keeping this team, just in their lane, right? Do what you can do, play good defense, run the ball well behind your good offensive line, make the smart short passes and move the chains when you can, try to get the ball in the end zone. Jacoby Brissett is a guy that he's going to be on the free agent wire for most of the season, and I think you can stream him most weeks and feel pretty good about it. Now, the ceiling is limited, there's no doubt about that. It's very unlikely that you're going to get a monster week out of Jacoby Brissett. So I understand that, and if you want to go for upside, you need a team that's going to have maybe that could have that 304 touchdown performance. I just don't think you can expect that out of Jacoby Brissett. But for me, when I'm streaming quarterbacks on a week-to-week basis, I'm usually just hoping to get that 17, 18 points. If I can hit 20 points, I'm really happy with that, with a quarterback that I'm streaming. So, and I think Jacoby Brissett can be that guy or be around those points, most weeks with most matchups. So I do think he's a guy you can play this week again. He's playing at home against Houston. Houston's a decent defense, but, not great. And I think he's going to find a way to have a viable week. Expect 250 and, maybe a couple of touchdowns. And I'm totally cool with that. All right, let's move to some of our quarterback disappointments. A personal one for me, not just because I had him, pretty highly ranked in the early offseason, but I did also put some draft capital into him in my fantasy leagues, and that's Jared Goff. And he has been a big story because of how out of sorts that offense has looked. The Sean McVay-led, high-powered offense. Really creative, finding ways to get everybody open out there. They have all those weapons, and you see Todd Gurley, not looking like himself. That was the story all offseason with the knee. Now he's having other issues and can't get Robert Woods going. This is a guy that, every week was a, 8+ target guy that would catch 6 to 8, balls and put 75 yards up there. And that's just not happening at all. So Robert Woods owners are not happy. Brandon Cooks owners are not happy. Cooper Kupp is the only guy that's really eating well in Los Angeles there for the Rams, and certainly not Jared Goff owners. His numbers have just been relatively atrocious. I mean, he's not even playable. I've got a league where I have the stack with Goff and Woods, and I'm 1-5 in that league. That's my bad league. I mentioned I was 12-3 in the last 3 weeks. Well, the 3 losses are in this league where I have Woods and Goff, and I just can't get something going. There's, not a lot on the waiver wire. Now, I have, people I can sub in for Woods, but, with Goff, it's just tough in that league. There's not a lot going on. I keep feeling like every week could be the week that maybe turns it around, right? How do you not turn it around with those weapons, with McVay, and then they go ahead and put up a huge bomb. Just a terrible game at home against San Fran this week. Couldn't get anything going. We're in, under 100 yards passing for most of the game, and it was just terrible. Robert Woods got into the end zone on a rushing play on an end around. The only thing that saved his day. But I really want to focus on Goff here because he's been really, really bad, and they've been bad. So I think this is the week where I'm ready to. I don't know if I can drop Goff yet in a league where it's very thin on the free agent wire, but I'm definitely ready to sit him and maybe stream somebody else because something's got to give with Jared Goff. I don't know what you can do with this guy. It's just been really bad. So, oh man, where's he been? I mean, where's he actually even fall on the year? Number 19 on the year, 14.9 points per game. I mean, 15 points per game does not get it done for a guy you drafted to be, in my opinion, a guy I thought was like a top 10 quarterback, a number 7, number 9 kind of guy. 19 is really, really bad. Just slightly above the next guy I want to talk about is disappointment. Baker Mayfield. We all know Baker's had a really tough go of it early in the season. They just haven't looked good. They've had a lot of primetime games, a lot of high-pressure games. Freddie Kitchens, I think, is a big, big problem for this team. His play calling, his leadership, I just don't think is ready for prime time and is ready to be a head coach. He's got very little experience, even as a coordinator, and I just don't think that that was a good move by the Cleveland Browns. They've got a lot of young talent. They went out and they got OBJ. They've got Nick Chubb. They've got Kareem Hunt coming back. They've got all this weaponry, and they just don't have a guy that knows how to use it in Freddie Kitchens. And I don't want to absolve Baker Mayfield of all accountability here. He has not played well. He's not been making great decisions, finding the open guys. But really, I do want to put a good amount of the blame on Freddie Kitchens because I think that's where a lot of it belongs. But as the number 21 quarterback on the year, 13.1 points per game, you have been nothing but disappointed, especially because he creeped up, really high near the end of the offseason or near the end of the preseason in ADP. His average draft position started jumping up there, and he was, for a while, the number 5, number 6, kind of number 7 quarterback taken. After kind of the big guys, Mahomes, Watson, those guys went first. But really, I saw Baker Mayfield as high as number 4 and, kind of on the low side, quarterback 8, 9, 10. I think everybody was just buying into the hype and saw the numbers going up. And it's just been really bad for Baker Mayfield. So I don't know if there's better times coming around the corner here. The next 3 games, it's not going to be easy going here. He's got New England, he's got Denver, he's got Buffalo. That is not a good stretch of games for a quarterback. So the bye week this week, hopefully, they can make some adjustments. They can get the offense rolling when they come back. But against New England and Buffalo, those have been 2 of the best defenses all year. And Denver, after a really bad start the last couple of weeks, has looked all of a sudden out of nowhere like a really solid D. So I don't know what to expect out of them. I think Cleveland's in for a bad few weeks after their bye week. So I'm selling my Cleveland options with the exception of Nick Chubb. I don't like it. All right, let's move to running back. There's been a lot of great storylines at the running back position, and for me, a big one was Mark Ingram, one of my biggest surprises of the season so far. And, I told everyone I could tell in the offseason not to draft Mark Ingram. That was totally my fault. Mark Ingram has been nothing short of fantastic on the season. He's really been putting up big numbers. Now, I know, he started the season with Miami and Arizona, and that's kind of like, at this point, a cheat code, right? You're getting tons of offensive production out of any teams that are playing Miami and are playing Arizona. But you still can't argue with the numbers. He's the number 10 running back on the year in a PPR format, just about 17.5 points per game. You got to be thrilled with that. I know the last couple of weeks maybe haven't been fantastic, but he's been playing okay. But he's getting the rock a lot. He's still the number 1 option there. What I like is that Gus Edwards isn't seeing the field as much as I thought he might, which was one reason why I didn't love Ingram to begin with. And I just didn't know how good the offense was going to be, in the sense that I didn't know if there were going to be red zone opportunities. I figured it would be kind of a boom or bust kind of an offense with Lamar Jackson, a lot of inaccurate passing and 3 and outs, and then hitting big plays and not really giving Ingram a lot of chances close to the goal line. But this offense has been much improved. Lamar Jackson's at the head of that. He's passing the ball better. He's running the ball when he needs to, with less and less planned runs for the quarterback, less and less option plays. He's running the ball when the pocket collapses, but they really are running the ball a lot with Mark Ingram, and I see no reason to expect they're not going to keep running the ball with him. They are playing at Seattle this week, not a great matchup, but not a terrible one either. Then they've got their bye. They play New England after that, so obviously not a good matchup, and then Cincinnati. So I think it's going to be a little bit of a mixed bag for Mark Ingram going forward. I think if you're expecting him to be an RB1 at this point, that you're going to be disappointed. But I do think he's a solid back-end RB2 for the rest of the year. And maybe I'm still undervaluing him, and that's very possible. But that's where I'm looking at. I'm looking at a RB, 18 to 20, for the rest of the season, which is still really solid and, a little bit better than where I was looking at him going into the season. Another running back I want to talk about is Carlos Hyde. And Carlos Hyde has been getting a lot of volume. He's getting 20 plus carries right now. He's the only guy getting carries on that team. He ran the ball, I think, 26 times this last week against KC, 115 or so yards. Looked really good doing it. He's not getting much receiving work because you still have Duke Johnson there, but when you're getting the ball that many times in an offense that's really good with a lot of weapons, I'm on board. And again, it's all about expectations. If you're in PPR format, maybe he takes just a little bit of a value dip because he's not going to get the work out of the backfield. But he's the 22 running back on the season in PPR. He's an RB2. I don't think anybody expected that. He's getting, similar workload to what Lamar Miller was getting, and I think he's being a little bit better with that. He's running the ball better as of late, and I think that he is a mid-tier running back 2 going forward. I just like this offense. I think they're getting better every week. They're starting to use more of their weapons. You're seeing their tight ends have a little bit more involvement. Will Fuller had a huge game and just missed having a big game this last week. If he didn't have a couple of bad drops, he could have had a really big one. Their schedule is okay coming up. They play Indianapolis next week. Then they've got the Raiders. They've got the Jaguars, all before their bye week. So I think this is looking good for Carlos Hyde to keep up that same production and to have that mid-tier running back 2 consistency with possibly back-end running back 1 upside on any given week, depending if he can get into the end zone a couple of times. But I do think you want to play Carlos Hyde. I've been very impressed, and for me, he's passing the eye test. I was watching this Houston-Kansas City game, and he just looked very decisive in his runs. He was running hard, running downhill, beating up the defense. And when you're getting 25 carries, that really plays into the fourth quarter when you're kind of wearing them down and you've been beating them up a little bit and making them work for every tackle. They start to give in a little bit near the end of the game, and then you can really press your advantage. And I think Hyde's going to be able to do that. All right, there have been some bad running backs also this year. I want to start with Joe Mixon. Unfortunately, Joe Mixon, very disappointing for me, very disappointing for a lot of fantasy owners. Now, I don't have any shares in Joe Mixon. It's just not the way my drafts went after the A.J. Green injury, and then the offensive line, already started getting banged up before the season. I just kind of, just cooled off a little bit on him, but I wasn't thinking that he was going to be, this bad. He's the running back 30 right now in PPR formats. He's only scoring 9.2 points per game, and that just doesn't get it done. You drafted this guy as probably a guy you're thinking is RB1 talent, maybe, an RB10, RB12, and, maybe at worst case scenario, mid-tier RB2 if he's not performing. But lately, just haven't been getting the work here. I mean, he had one good week in week 3 and has been disappointing every other week on the season, honestly. 10 rushing yards against Baltimore last week. Yeah, he put up almost 100 yards against Arizona a couple weeks before that, but couldn't get in the end zone. Still only wound up with 11, just about 11 points. Pittsburgh bottled him up the week before that. Ironically, his best game was against the Buffalo Bills, and that's because he got some work out of the backfield catching some passes, which he really hasn't been doing much of, at all these games. So, um, I don't know. Joe Mixon owners, I don't know what to think about it. I know it's hard to think about benching him. He's got Jacksonville coming up, then he's got the Rams and a bye week, and then Baltimore again, who just shut him down. And I don't love that 4 game stretch for him specifically. And if I'm a Joe Mixon owner, I am at that point where I'm thinking, what are my options? Am I going to keep, just trotting him out there and hoping that he's going to, pick up the pace here? Running back 30, man, I mean, that's barely flex territory. I mean, for me, I know I have people on my bench every week that I'm hoping score, well over 9.2 points in PPR. I mean, I have, running back 3s and 4s on my rosters that I expect that from, quite honestly. So, I don't know. That's been pretty ugly. I also want to go to the Bears running back situation quickly and talk about the disappointment I've had with them. That's both David Montgomery and Tariq Cohen, and I think the Bears just need to figure out who they are. Are you a smash mouth team that plays hard defense and runs the ball, wants to run the clock down, or are you going to try to throw the ball around with Mitch Trubisky and be a team that plays play action and throws the ball deep? I don't know what this team is really, doing. They obviously drafted David Montgomery to be a 3-down back. They tried to make Jordan Howard into that last year and gave him every opportunity to be a 3-down back. He just couldn't handle it. So I don't know what you do with David Montgomery at this point. He's running back 35 on the year in PPR formats now. He did already have his bye week, so he's actually got 10.1 points per game, which probably puts him closer to the running back 30-ish, actually, a little bit better than Joe Mixon, per game, a point better. But still very disappointing. I expect better things for David Montgomery after their bye week. I think their bye week came at a perfect time for this team. They really need to figure out what's going on and what they're going to do in these weeks coming up. Right now they have New Orleans, the Chargers, the Eagles, and the Lions. Not, again, kind of a middle of the road as far as strength of schedule there coming up. And I think he needs to be getting the ball in his hands, 18 times on the ground and catching the ball 5+ times to really see what he can do. I think he's got that kind of talent. And if they're not going to do that, what's going to happen with Tariq Cohen? I mean, why is he not being used as a playmaker if David Montgomery's not going to get the ball that much? Tariq Cohen is the guy that can touch the ball only 8 times a game, but maybe could break 1 or 2 huge plays, maybe score or just get you down the field. And he's not doing that either. Last year they were using him all over the field. They were splitting him out wide. They were putting him in motion. They were doing lots of fun things with the formats, with the formations, and just not seeing any of that. So Tariq Cohen is off the radar for me right now as a flex play. He's not even a flex play for me right now. I'm not thinking about him that way. And of course, every week he can have that 1 or 2 big plays. I just said that, so I could eat my words there. But I do think that you want to play David Montgomery, and I do think you're going to expect better times ahead from David Montgomery. Let's move on to wide receivers here. We're going to jump in and go with Courtland Sutton as my biggest surprise wide receiver. We know he has the talent. He's a big physical guy that can play the position really well. But the question mark coming into this season was, will Emmanuel Sanders come back from his injury, and how fast will he come back at 100%? Will he be the number 1 wide receiver when he does? And I think in week 1 we were all thrown off guard because Emmanuel Sanders had that big week 1. He came out and looked great, and we were all really happy for him. Of course, that's all good and well. That being said, Courtland Sutton has come on in the last number of weeks, and I think is definitely the number 1 wide receiver in Denver moving forward. He's the number 12 wide receiver on the year in PPR formats, and I think you can expect fringe wide receiver 1 numbers for him the rest of the year. He's getting the targets. He's just so physical and great at wrestling the ball away. Those 50-50 balls, he's going to win most of the time. And if I'm a Courtland Sutton owner, I am penciling him in every week. I want to play him. He's got KC next week. Then he plays Indianapolis. He plays Cleveland Browns before his bye week. I like that stretch right there. I think he's going to be a big play And if you're a Cortland Sutton owner, definitely don't get rid of him. People are going to be trying to get him. They're going to try to buy him, off somebody else's name. And don't do that. Cortland Sutton is going to be a stud for the rest of the year. I think you got to keep rolling with him. I do want to bring up an honorable mention for Terry McLaurin. Scary Terry really has emerged as one of the top, if not the top, deep threats in the league. This guy, you put it out there and he's going to get under the ball and get it. I think as long as Case Keenum is out there throwing him the ball, you feel great about playing Terry McLaurin and knowing that you can get that touchdown any given week. He's the number 14 receiver on the year, in PPR formats. But in truth, he's scoring 18.8 points per game. He already missed one game. And that 18.8 points per game would put him at the number 5 wide receiver. And to me, that's just crazy. He's not even catching the ball that often, and that's the other scary part about Scary Terry, is that he doesn't have the volume. But at this point, the connection with him and Keenum, the deep ball is there, and there's not anybody else really to catch the ball in Washington, it seems like. They're not using Trey Quinn that much. Paul Richardson, they've had all their tight ends banged up. So they're using Chris Thompson out of the backfield. They're obviously going to run the ball more now that Callahan is the head coach. But I think the deep ball is there for Scary Terry. I don't know that you can expect him to be a wide receiver one week in and week out because of the touchdown dependency. But this guy's going to give you good weeks more often than not. I think he's a guy you can play, pretty much every week. So what's he got coming up? A little tough stretch here, actually. So maybe you want to back off for the next few weeks. He's got San Fran, Minnesota, and Buffalo before the bye week. So I'd be a little bit hesitant here to expect big numbers out of Terry for the next 2 or 3 weeks. Again, the deep ball could always be there. But I think you got to temper expectations for the next few weeks. He's playing a bunch of really tough secondaries. And I don't know if he's going to be able to put up those numbers for the next few weeks. But for the first 6 weeks, he's really been fantastic. All right, leading the way for my wide receiver disappointments is going to be Davante Adams. Davante Adams, had one great week. So if you drafted Davante Adams, you drafted him in the first round. If you were me, you spent your number 1 draft pick in 2 different leagues, and you made Davante Adams the number 1 wide receiver pick. Yes, I chose Davante over Julio Jones, over DeAndre Hopkins, Odell Beckham Jr., Michael Thomas, and I'm not being rewarded for it at all. I had the one big week, and that was it. Luckily, I've got some fantastic options, and the 2 leagues where I have Davante Adams, I've been able to win a few games without him. But you're not happy at all if you're a Davante Adams owner. This is stressful. He needs to get back from turf. I know turf toe is a tough injury. A lot of guys are out for a lot of weeks with it, but it just looked kind of crazy. He was diagnosing himself soon after the game that he was going to be out. I mean, it didn't really look that bad. It was at the end of a great game, and I would have liked to seen another couple of days before he was just ruled out, almost indefinitely. At this point, it's been 2 weeks. I don't know about next week right now. So, obviously you're going to just stash him on your bench, but the point is you got your first round draft pick. People that drafted Saquon Barkley are about to get him back. So, most of the other first round draft picks have been returning their value, right? Yeah, McCaffrey's killing it. Kamara's doing okay. Elliott's out there. Julio Jones has had some bad games, but he's also had, a few big ones. Michael Thomas's consistency's been there. Beckham Jr. has had a couple of bad games also, but he was kind of later than you pay for Davante Adams. So you got to be pretty disappointed in Davante Adams. Hopefully he can get back on the field, and that's the thing. If he gets back on the field, I think he's going to be fine. Even though the offense hasn't looked great, I think he's going to be fine. But he's got to get back on the field, and I got this weird feeling, I don't know, man, that he's going to milk this thing for a couple more weeks. And it's going to be a couple more weeks till you get him back. I hope I'm wrong. But at this point, it's Tuesday afternoon. I haven't heard anything. It's Tuesday morning, and I haven't heard anything yet. So I'm expecting him to not practice early in the week, and we're going to have to wait and see what happens. So we'll go from there. All right. One more disappointment. You're not going to spend a lot of time is Deshaun Jackson. And I'm only disappointed because he looked so good in week one. Philadelphia looked so good in week one. I think that if Phillies had Deshaun Jackson this whole year up to this point, we'd be talking a lot differently about them. I think Wentz would be, putting up superstar numbers. I think that team would be absolutely rolling with Deshaun Jackson. He's like the exact weapon they needed. I think he showed that in week one, and then all of a sudden they haven't had him back since. Let's hope for him to make a speedy recovery for that offense. At tight end, we're going to talk about a couple of guys. Austin Hooper's got to be brought up here. He's a huge surprise, the number one tight end on the season in PPR formats, probably in every format, but he is just killing it right now. Every week, the guy's averaging 18.3 points a game in PPR, the number one tight end, and by a long shot, over 2 points a game, just about 2 points a game higher than Evan Ingram, who's only played in 5 games. So Ingram's number 2 on the year in points per game. Mark Andrews, 15.2. Kelsey, 14.6. These guys that are great tight ends are well off of Austin Hooper's pace. Atlanta's a team that has so many offensive weapons that it feels a little bit risky to assume that Austin Hooper's going to keep up this level of play, but I think he can. He's open all the time, and I think the more that Matt Ryan gets accustomed to finding him open, during the game and depending on him as a clutch player, getting those third down conversions, moving the ball down the field. For a team that's struggling, I think that you got to find some things that are working and you got to go with them. I think Austin Hooper is a great play. Will he be the number one tight end at the end of the year? Probably not. I understand that. But he definitely could be. And I do think he's a locked and loaded, consistent tight end one, with great upside every single week right now. And he's just really been impressive. I also want to go a little further down the list here. I want to talk about somebody that is going to be off most people's radar, but I just think that the big playability is there. And if you're stuck in this quagmire of tight ends, this Mad Maxian landscape of tight ends, that you can think about playing Ricky Seals-Jones. He's getting those 4 or 5, targets a game, which is, what a lot of these guys are getting when you move down the list here if you're not one of these top options. But he's getting down the field targets. He's getting big air yard targets. And I love that for Ricky Seals-Jones. It feels like every week he's on the cusp of making a big play. I just think that if you're making a dart throw and you're thinking about playing, Vance McDonald, or you're thinking about playing, Jared Cook, or, I don't know, one of these guys, you're thinking about playing Eric Ebron, who's touchdown dependent. I think you can play Ricky Seals-Jones, and I think that you're going to hit a couple of big weeks and you're going to hit a couple of really low ones. But just a sneaky guy, I think, going forward. So just remember, I said it. I think he's going to be sneaky for the rest of the year. That's that. So many tight end disappointments to choose from. We're not going to talk too much about O.J. Howard because, we all know O.J. Howard has been really bad. He's the tight end 30. The tight end 30 on the season, 4.8 points per game. That's just brutal. We all know that. But the other guy I want to talk about is Vance McDonald. Vance McDonald, he's been on the field a good amount, and he got 1 target this last week against the Chargers. I don't know how to defend that as a fantasy owner and say that you can keep playing him. I know he's had the shoulder injury a little bit, but he had the bye week to rest up, or he's going to have the bye week to rest up, and he's going to come back a little bit healthier. But with Devlin Hodges throwing him the ball, or Mason Rudolph whenever he comes back, I don't know. It's what seems like an easy schedule after the bye. Miami, the Colts, and the Rams. None of those teams are relatively good against the tight ends. So you feel like there's opportunity there. But if you're asking me right now, am I playing Ricky Seals-Jones or Vance McDonald? I'm playing Ricky Seals-Jones just because. What the hell is Vance McDonald doing? Nothing at all. All right, so those are our biggest surprises and disappointments of the year. We call it a WTFF. What the fantasy football? What's going on today? I am out of it. This is not one of the better episodes here. So sorry about that out there in YouTube land, but we're gonna keep working on it. We're gonna keep getting better. I hope to see a lot of changes. We're gonna have some special guests lined up over the next few weeks. Going to get some of my friends that I play fantasy football with, some people that do other podcasts, just some other good people to come on and keep me company, give me somebody to talk to. It gets a little lonely in here talking just to the camera, so I wouldn't mind having somebody else to chat with here while I'm doing this. So, expect to see a little bit of that. You guys can reach out to me. I'm available at Twitter. You can, hit me personally. I'm at Jim Neander, or you can hit the show at The GOAT FF Podcast. Again, that's at The GOAT FF Podcast. You can email me, Jim at thegoatfantasyfootball.com. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us anywhere. Please come back and watch the YouTube videos. I swear they'll be better than this one was. But I do want to thank you for joining us here. We're going to keep getting ready for Week 7 throughout the week. So keep in with us. We're going to have a few preview shows and help you set your lineups. Keep an eye out for those injuries. Play the waiver wire this week. Make sure you're not letting your team go. I know it can be frustrating if you're 2-4, you're 1-5, but keep playing your team. Keep playing the waiver wire, and let's get some W's. All right. Have a great one, everybody. Really appreciate it.